Hey guys, it's Jack. I wanted to let you know that we're starting a new push for subscriptions here on Human Events Daily. So make sure that when you're listening to this podcast, you hit subscribe, you download it, and you share it with 5 of your friends. Make sure they're all going and downloading as well, because we need to get the signal out as much as possible. Look, we've done so much over the past couple of years since this show started, and we're only going to do so much more. Let's get it. This is what happens when the fourth turning meets fifth generation warfare.
A commentator, international social media sensation, and former Navy intelligence veteran.
This is Human Events with your host, Jack Posobiec.
Christ is king.
What's interesting is there's been a lot of chatter, of course, about this peace deal with Iran. And one of the questions I'm most often asked is, well, how is this different from the Obama JCPOA? And there are all of these answers I could give. Number one, we're not giving them a red cent of American money. Obama gave them over $1 billion in a pallet of cash. There are all these substantive differences. I actually think the most important difference is, you know what those Gulf Arab countries thought about the JCPOA? They hated it because they thought it empowered Iran to be a bad actor. Do you know what they think about the President Trump peace plan? They love it.
Florida's Attorney General says time is up for TikTok. James Uthmeier is accusing its parent company of failing to keep kids safe on its social media platform. And today he filed a lawsuit demanding action and accountability.
Your side digging deeper into a new settlement between Charlotte-Mecklenburg schools and the families of 3 students who painted this design on a spirit rock.
You can see it features a quote, "Live like Kirk," with red, white, and blue paint.
Now, the message came just days after Charlie Kirk's death last September.
CMS originally said the rock was painted without permission and was considered vandalism to school property. On Monday, CMS reversed its stance, saying its original decision was wrong. Barham says as part of the settlement, the district will pay $95,000 in damages and attorney fees, exonerate the student for any alleged wrongdoing.
B-52 bomber crashed shortly after takeoff yesterday, killing all 8 on board. The accident happened at Edwards Air Force Base in Southern California. This is north of Los Angeles.
California's Democratic Governor Gavin Newsom is making new accusations, some big ones, against President Trump, claiming the Trump Justice Department is now investigating him and his wife because he might run for president.
From the FBI, the agency tells NBC News that it disrupted an alleged drone attack plot on that White House UFC event that took place over the weekend. More than 4,000 people were in attendance at this first of its kind event held on the president's 80th birthday. That includes, of course, the president. Vice President J.D. Vance was also there, and several cabinet members. A senior law enforcement official tells NBC News the plot was, quote, quite serious.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, welcome aboard today's edition of Human Events Daily. We're here live on Real America's Voice. Today is June 16th, 2026, Anno Domini. An anti-Trump terror plot with as many as 23 involved suspects has now been uncovered that was foiled by the FBI at the UFC event that was attended by myself, my wife, and 85,000 fans, supporters, American citizens, as well as the president, the vice president, and many members of the cabinet. Now, we're still getting the details up on this. I do have the affidavit. Human Events Daily has obtained a copy of the affidavit from the Joint Terrorism Task Force, as well as Ohio. So we're getting some information there regarding one individual who is being stated as potentially the mastermind of all this. This individual is identified as Proper, and he is a 19-year-old male who lives at a residence with his parents. His father stated that he had recently met random people online and had been planning, quote, recons with these individuals. His father said Proper would be planning to leave in that upcoming weekend, the weekend of June 13th, to meet up with these online individuals. He had recently acquired camping gear, food, ballistic plates, a new shotgun, a rifle, lots of ammunition, extra magazines, and plate carriers, and that he wanted to conduct missions with these online individuals that he met through signal chats. His father did not identify what exactly those missions were or who the people were. But at the same time, it does say that at the conclusion of this encounter, that Proper was transported by the Knox County Sheriff's Office to a local hospital where they submitted an application for emergency admission based on homicidal ideations. They then contacted the FBI. So it does sound like the mother and the father had been actually reached out here. So there was an anti-government individual, very, very anti-Trump. Search warrants were executed. We also know that in some of the information that's come out, they've talked about being upset with the millionaires and the billionaires and other sort of rhetoric that we associate with the anti-Trump movement and more general anti-Trumpers. And so we're digging in to much more on this. But one of the keys here to understand is that there was a potential for attacks from drones. There was potential for attacks from snipers. And in fact, that's something that one of the friends that I went in with, we saw a drone flying overhead. And I said, is that one of ours? I said, we hope so. And then my friend said, yeah, you better watch out if something drops from that. Look, this was obviously going to be something that was a potential terror target. All of the Freedom 250 events are going to be potential terror targets. That's just the truth, especially ones that we know the president will be at, such as the upcoming rally in Washington, D.C. This is the threat we live under. And by the way, how much you want to bet that this lines up with a lot that we learned about the SPLC and these online informants on the same day that we find out one of the SPLC's head of intelligence was in a relationship with a member of one of these extremist organizations that she had been paying while she was probably sleeping with. Gosh, golly, gee whiz. Be right back. Jack Posobiec with more Human Events Daily, Real America's Voice.
Nothing will stand in our way, and our golden age has just begun.
This is Human Events with Jack Posobiec.
Now it's time for everyone to understand what America First truly means.
Welcome to the Second American Revolution.
In recent days, federal agents have knocked on the doors of family, friends, and former employees. Not because they found a crime, because they're simply trying to find one. They're demanding records. They're abusing the grand jury process, digging through years and years of random documents. Donald Trump isn't just coming after me because of my mean tweets. He's coming after me because I'm considering running for president, because he hates that I've consistently called him out over and over again for his lies and deceit. Donald Trump is simply the most corrupt president in American history. He's turned the levers of government into his own personal power ministries to reward cronies and to try to jail his opponents.
All right, Jack Posobiec, we're back live here, Human Events Daily, Real America's Voice. Now, that was, of course, Gavin Newsom, the governor of California, who was telling us all about how he's, playing the victim card. He's a victim of President Trump. He's so upset. How could President Trump, such a naughty, naughty man, want to look into his finances, looking to see what's going on? But actually, we started doing some digging on this here at the Human Events Daily team, and we dug into more of those finances of Governor Newsom and his wife, Jennifer Newsom, and come to find that it seems to be that they may have been running a very similar pay-to-play kind of scheme that is exactly what Governor Bill Clinton used to run along with his wife, Hillary Clinton, where they had an outside organization, a series of outside organizations, a 501c3, a 501c4, and a for-profit, whereby they would solicit donations, they would solicit taxpayer funds. Then those funds would go to an LLC, that's a for-profit company, and the money would flow back to the family in terms of salary and benefits to the governor's wife. Many of the entities that were hit up for these solicitations, by the way, of course, had what? Business before the state. This is a big problems. Some of these include, by the way, the Federated Indians of Grattan Rancheria, an Indian tribe that contributed $1 million to Newsom's nonprofit between 2024 and 2025. PG&E in places like, big companies, by the way, as well. Big names, AT&T, Comcast, Kaiser Permanente, right? What's the governor doing? He's squeezing them for money. Hey, maybe I can give you a good ruling if you make sure that you write a check to my wife's organization. Sounds like pay to play to me, and certainly sounds like something that would be an investigation by the Department of Justice. And in fact, we're starting to learn that this may have actually been started by the Biden Justice Department out of the Sacramento office. Well, I want to dig in on California, and we want to go and dig in on all things California. We must, of course, go to Katie Zacharias. She is the general counsel of Fix California, as well as a former DHS spokesperson. Katie, how are you?
Excellent, Jack. Loving seeing this coming to light. It's a breath of fresh air.
So when you mention this coming to light, that's because these are the kind of stories that are actually kind of an open secret in California, aren't they?
Absolutely. It's the same open secret of Eric Swalwell. It's the same open secret that has plagued California, all the homeless funds, all of these shady nonprofits right now. That I'm going to give, we're going to backtrack in time a little bit. We see this Stop Nick Shirley Act exposing fraud, right? That is the wife, Mia Bonta, who is a representative in California. That was introduced by the wife of our Attorney General of California, Rob Bonta. Rob Bonta, his job as Attorney General is to investigate fraud, yet his wife has introduced a bill to stop citizens like Nick Shirley from exposing what? Fraud. This is the type of circular corruption that happens in California. They want to silence those exposing the fraud. They want to run and hide. And watching Gavin Newsom's monologue, feeling sorry for himself, don't go after my wife. He's targeting his enemies. I'm sorry. Do you know that Jack Smith had the entire FBI raid Mar-a-Lago and raid Melania Trump's, our beautiful first lady's underwear drawer, and expose all of their stuff? And they didn't have any of this fraudulent finances that Gavin Newsom allegedly has to set off this chain of events, Jack. This type of stuff, the Justice Department does not have to make up or fabricate things to go search and find like they did with Jack Smith and Merrick Garland. This has actually preceded President Trump's DOJ and was under, guess who? Joe Biden's DOJ. So if he wants to be upset about it, he needs to go squarely and look at the former administration here.
Yeah, and I'm reading, and I've got a huge shout out to Andrew Kerr over at the Free Beacon, and he talks about some of these letters that go back to August of 2024, when Newsom's office is talking about saying that they wanted to reject this Indian casino from the Khoi Nation, and of course that he wanted it to go to this other Indian tribe that had actually donated $1 million. And again, just over $1 million to his wife's shady nonprofit. Now, you could say, oh, really? Did they just have a better proposal? Was it better for the community? Or was it they were the ones that put money into his family's pocket? So that right there, just one of the easiest things you could point at to say, okay, this looks like a guy who was selling the governor's office. And it's not that he's terrified of, he's trying to protect his wife. No, he doesn't want anyone looking into what they were doing.
Correct. The truth has nothing to fear of investigation. If the Newsoms didn't have anything to hide, they'd say, look, all these nonprofits, go audit them. All of our entire state of California, come audit it. We want to partner with you to uncover the fraud. And yet, what time and time again did the Newsoms do? Cover up, shift blame, and say, they're under some targeted attack that's actually manufactured. There's grounds for this. And this is the same pay-to-play scam we all saw this, Jack, just recently. The free diapers for Californians, except what was the nonprofit that was providing these diapers? It was under, guess who? Jennifer Newsom. So this isn't the first time that we're seeing this. We're just starting to see it all come to light. But the bigger question, Jack, is outside of the fraud, outside of the Newsoms, is what is the Democrat Party going to do if it becomes too much of a liability for them, right? They were propping up Gavin Newsom for a while, but now you can kind of see the DNC starting to circle around Kamala Harris, because this is starting to give a little bit of a stench of what? Eric Swalwell. They're not going to protect him like they did Graham Plattner maybe, or Jay Jones, if he becomes too much of a liability for their presidential ambitions in 28.
So do you think that's what this is? Do you think that some of this potentially is Democrats eating their own, like we saw with Eric Swalwell? And look, I'm not going to reveal my source on the Eric Swalwell video that I posted. I would certainly never reveal my source or anything to do with that. But suffice to say that Eric Swalwell is probably not the kind of guy who's going to be going out and partying the way that he was with a bunch of Republicans.
Correct. It's what happened even with Fareed Zakaria calling out the Democrat policies in California. Okay, after the primary, and now he's finally calling out that California is a failed state under Gavin Newsom. And everyone says, oh, he's always been fair. He's always been fair. No, this is time. The DNC doesn't do anything. The New York Times piece on Plattner was timed. They test the waters to see what is the appetite for voters, and how much of this can they handle? Well, when it comes to Gavin Newsom, he's at that tipping point. He can't fall back on policy. He can't fall back on an effective California. Even the Democrats know that, and they're starting to come out and say it, like Zakaria. But this is where it gets questionable. This has always existed. Right now, it's coming to light, and Todd Blanche, acting Attorney General Todd Blanche, did not say anything about it, likely because this preexisted him. Look, Dana Williamson was Gavin Newsom's chief of staff. She was funneling money into now a dormant bank account of Javier Becerra. Okay, Becerra is now California's front runner gubernatorial candidate, and he's claiming, oh, I didn't know anything about this. You didn't know anything about it, or you don't know anything about it now because you could get caught doing this. So this whole scam, Jack, is about to be unturned. And I think they're throwing people under the proverbial bus to protect power, to protect Becerra, to protect Kamala Harris or a presidential candidate. And again, this is all my personal opinion. However, it stinks. It has that stench of a cover-up, or at least throwing someone under the bus because liability might be getting too great for them.
Well, and of course, that's interesting because, right, this is the power structure of California we're talking about. And at the end of the day, if they want to, they can find another governor. They can find another first lady of the state. They don't need Gavin Newsom. They don't need Jennifer Newsom. They can go out and find whoever they want. And just because he has his career ambitions and his higher office political aspirations, it doesn't matter to the power structure because they will cut him loose. And I think that when we are, as you say, when we're looking at the 2028 primary, and certainly there's a lot of speculation about the Republican side of the ticket, but when you look at the Democrat side of the ticket, you've got two people who hail from San Francisco. You got Gavin Newsom, who was the former mayor, and then the former DA, Kamala Harris. So you're talking about the same pot of money, the same mega donors, the same Silicon Valley money that they're going to be going after, all the rest of it. That means that there isn't really enough room at the top of the ticket for both of them. That could be a huge piece of what's coming to play here. Jack Posobiec, we're on with Katie Zachariah. One more segment on this deep dive into Gavin Newsom and Jennifer Newsom and their web of shady nonprofits. Coming up next, Human Events Daily here on Real America's Voice.
You talk about influencers. These are influencers, and they're friends of mine. Jack Posobiec. Where's Jack? Jack, he's done a great job.
All right, folks, Jack Posobiec back live, Human Events Daily. Folks, did you know that the most methylene blue being sold online is the same grade that's being used in fish tanks? Look, folks, you got to watch out for these low-quality bottles. They're untested for heavy metals and made overseas. Who can you trust? It's the Wellness Company. And with their Recharge product, a doctor-formulated supplement combined powdered methylene blue with NAD plus and PQQ. This is methylene blue. We're talking USP grade, ensuring top-tier purity for maximum safety and effectiveness. It's not the sketchy stuff that you can find all over Amazon. They push it to you there. Recharge is formulated with research-backed ingredients to optimize brain function and cellular repair while supporting clean, lasting energy. Tap into cognitive and metabolic support that helps you stay energized, focused, and resilient all day long. Choose a trusted formula made for your body, not for fish tanks. Feel the difference with enhanced mental clarity, sustained energy, sharper focus, and protection against cognitive decline. And no, it won't turn your tongue blue. Head over to twc.health/POSO and use promo code POSO to get 10% off plus free shipping. Again, that's twc.health/POSO and use promo code POSO to get 10% off. twc.health/POSO. All right, folks, we got to dig in here. We're doing the deep dive on Gavin Newsom and Jennifer Newsom. And so I came to this thing, and one could make a lot of comments. I'm not going to do that because this is a Christian network. This is a Christian show. But her for-profit company is called Girls Club Entertainment, which I could certainly make a lot of comments about, but I'm not going to. But here's what's interesting about what they actually do. They make films that are then showed in California classrooms. Katie Zachariah, did you realize that all of the curriculum and films that were being made for the California school system was actually being made by a company that's run by Jennifer Newsom and then paid for by the California Department of Education?
So if I'm getting this correct, Jack, Gavin Newsom's Department of Education is basically shilling for his wife's film companies and pushing DEI movies into our California public education system, hyperfeminism, soft masculinity, all of the radical policies from the left, and acting like this is objective information. This is what's coming out of California. This is almost as scandalous as the money situation that they're being investigated for through all the shady nonprofits, Jack. Sending in DEI to our schools straight from the governor. I mean, this is absolutely crazy.
Well, and it just to show you that, and is it illegal, right? It's technically not illegal, right? Unethical? Absolutely. Because what they're doing is folks, it's taking that gravy train of DEI, which we always said that it was, and we're showing that it's not something that the California educators are just going out and they're finding these great documentaries. No, absolutely not. What they're doing is they're buying them from the governor's wife to put money in her pocket up to, by the way, we're told since 2011, almost $4 million, $3.8 million from IRS filings. You see this all, by the way, this is like this, you would see this sometimes when they would give Barack Obama these $60 million to write a book or something. That's a payoff. Okay. That's the same thing this is. They're making government pay for them. They're living up in Martha's Vineyard, Cape Cod. It's like, what did you do to get your money? Right. This is what they do. I do want to go through, Katie, some of these movie titles with you. And as horrific as this is, and as I know you have 4 kids and you're out in California, listen to what they're showing in K-12 schools and universities. It includes MISS representation about media portrayals of women and underrepresentation in power. And then look at this one, The Mask You Live In, focusing on the harmful effects of traditional masculinity on boys and men. This is what they're paying for?
Jack, even more troubling, zooming out, look at what Jennifer Seibel Newsom has said before on giving her sons dolls. And really this hyper demasculinity of her sons, right? We even heard from Gavin Newsom himself that he was a huge Charlie Kirk fan and he couldn't wait to meet Charlie Kirk and wanted to skip school when he hosted him on his podcast, right? Which is the opposite, the antithesis, the antidote, the actual healthy masculinity is what Charlie Kirk showed through Turning Point, as you so well know. But the bigger picture, Jack, is this leftism, kind of this Marxism of really upending the American culture, the American school system, and using these puppet masters like Gavin Newsom and Jennifer Newsom through their videos to indoctrinate and infiltrate our school system, allegedly all in fairness and just trying to provide DEI and equity and all these other things. But the bigger messaging, which I always love to go bigger picture, is this is actually a much more coordinated attack against our educational system. If you have a person like Gavin Newsom who's using his wife's cis movies and being able to control what an entire population of public school children are being fed, and this hyper leftism and this wokeism kind of infiltrating our schools. And look, my kids do not go to public school, and they know exactly all of the filth that the Newsoms lie about and that public education has lied about. And I teach them that on a daily basis. But if parents are not paying attention and they don't have any other options but to send their children to these schools, this is devastating for America. And the bigger picture of Marxism and Newsom's being used to promote and promulgate Marxist ideology, wokeism, is really actually incredibly problematic and dangerous.
Right, and what are they doing? Of course, just like classic limousine liberals, rather than actually going out and putting these films, in the market or having people go watch them at a movie theater, see if they can make money. No, they're then paying for them with your taxpayer dollars. Katie Zachariah, we've got to have you back on as this scandal and this controversy deepens and widens. Where can people go to follow you in the interim?
All over the place at Katie Zachariah, Twitter or X, Instagram, LinkedIn. You can find me everywhere.
All right. And Truth Social. You're on Truth Social, right?
Truth Social, my favorite one to post on, Jack.
Oh, I love posting on there as well. The engagement is tremendous. Right back with more. Jack Posobiec, Real America's Voice.
Where's Jack? Where's Jack? Where is he? Jack, I want to see you. Great job, Jack. Thank you. What a job you do. You know, we have an incredible thing. We're always talking about the fake news and the bad, but we have guys, and these are the guys who should be getting Pulitzers.
All right, folks, we're back. Jack Posobiec live here, Real America's Voice, Human Events Daily. I want to go back a little bit to as more and more information comes out about this case involving the 23-person drone and sniper plot to massacre the crowd at the UFC event at the White House. I was there with Tanya Tay. We've got more information of this coming out, this idea that there'd be a drone strike, there would be herding, that they wanted the thousands and thousands of people to run through what they called a kill zone, second wave that would come through. And we're told that every single individual that was targeted by this domestic terrorist cell was in fact a Republican, was in fact, that was mentioned, including the anti-capitalist elite, billionaires, politicians who receive AIPAC donations, anti-Israel, wanted to kill as many Republicans as absolutely possible. So digging into all of this, why is there an attack on this? What does this mean? I want to bring on Evita Duffy, because not only are you someone who is constantly and consistently my favorite anti-communist, your parents were actually at the event as well, and this is the very thing that you have been warning about for so many years.
Yeah, and it's very personal to me too. I mean, my parents were at this event. They were at the Correspondents' Dinner where the president was of course almost killed as well. And we're told constantly that this is a both sides issue, that there's political violence on the left and the right. We need to bring the tone down. And the reality is that that's just not true. Like, overwhelmingly, the violence is from the political left. The people who have been the immediate victims of it, I'm thinking of President Trump or Charlie Kirk, are conservatives, are Republicans. And this is because leftist ideology is inherently violent. They actually see violence as a justified means of change, and they always have throughout all of history. And I think it's silly for us to pretend like this is a both sides issue when we know for a fact that it isn't.
Yeah, and I'm digging through that. It does actually look as though a number of weapons were purchased from this across multiple states: California, Nebraska, I think West Virginia or Ohio in some areas. Again, all this information is just coming out as we're speaking on this, but it's very clear that these were individuals who hated Republicans, who hated the president, who hated conservatives in general, hated the billionaires, the capitalists, et cetera. I mentioned earlier in the show, as I was walking in with just a guy who was in my group of friends, and I noticed that there was a drone above that did not look like a Secret Service drone. It looked like more of a commercially available drone. I said, I hope that's one of ours. And my friend just kind of quipped, yeah, if it drops something, get out of the way, move fast. But when it comes down to it, this is what we're seeing, that they want to attack not just the UFC, but Freedom 250. They want to attack the celebration of our country. Evita, what is it about communists? What is it about people of this stripe that hate these massive, ostentatious displays of America, American pride, and patriotism?
Well, listen, let's just be clear about America Freedom 250. So America 250 was originally the organization that was for a decade trying to create this event for America 250, and they were doing nothing, and they were infiltrated by wokies. And President Trump has relaunched with Freedom 250. He is making incredible celebrations of the United States, of our country, of our founding. This event in particular was full of
Yeah, and this event was something that we're going to work on reconnecting with Evita there. That this event is something that, and I know the story here as well, because America 250 was staffed up by the Biden administration, by Congress. They got in all their anti-American wokies in there, and they were going to put on a humiliation ritual. They were going to humiliate the United States. They were going to apologize for the United States for however many weeks they were going to put on these events. President Trump said, no, we're not doing that, but we have to move quickly. We have to have total control. That's why they set up Freedom 250, which would be a parallel organization to America 250, but one that the White House would work directly with. And so you'll see people there that have worked with the president before, that have held events with the president. The teams have come together and then partner with organizations like obviously UFC for the big kickoff event to be able to put on the degree of events, which of course America deserves for her 250th anniversary. And I've had friends texting me, every day since the event took place, and just looking at Justin Gaethje's walkout, standing there, paying homage to the founding fathers, to the Declaration of Independence, standing there in the Oval Office itself, looking at the actual Declaration of Independence, folks. And Topuria, by the way, he walked out. He didn't look at the Declaration. He walked right past it. He walked right past the Declaration, right? He's not American, whereas Gaethje comes out with the flag and everything there, and it's just so amazing to see. But what we need to understand is that these events were put together, put on Freedom 250 very quickly. Obviously, the UFC is an incredibly professional organization. There's no question that they know what they're doing. There was got little personal humble brag, I guess, that there was a company out of Lancaster, PA, that was the one that actually built the set that we saw known as the Claw for the UFC. They were the ones who built that and then brought it from Pennsylvania, trucked it on down to the White House. Also incredible to see, as well as the 85,000 people out there. So why do communists want to attack this? Why do communists hate this? Because they see people who are successful. They see displays of strength. They see displays of patriotism. People who are good looking, people who are smart, people who are intelligent, people who are affluent. And their response to all of this, because of whatever pain or whatever grievances they have from their own lives, rather than want to better their own selves, rather than to want to try to achieve on their own, what do? They turn to grievance, they turn to envy, they turn to resentment. And through that resentment, they say, you know something? We've got to tear them down. We've got to ruin their party. Because this is the celebration, by the way, that every child in America deserves. This is high class displays of excellence, patriotism, all combined. Masculinity. Of course it's masculinity. The same masculinity that Governor Newsom was paying Jennifer Newsom to make films against. President Trump is up there saying, no, we are going to celebrate masculinity because it was masculinity that built this country. It was masculinity that led General Washington and the soldiers of Valley Forge, the first veterans, to fight against the British, to fight for our independence as this country. That's what America 250 is all about. Going back to the very beginning. Yeah, we'll hunt you down on New Year's Eve. Crossing Delaware. That's General Washington. Fighting back. Saying we're not going to take it. That Americans will not live on our knees. That's not who we are. We're not going to deconstruct everything every person watching the show fought for. And everything that we did, by the way, to put President Trump where he is, not because of who he is as a person, but because of what he stands for as a person, that he stands for the United States of America, that he stands for masculinity too. And yes, by the way, that means bringing the ladies along. And let me tell you something. The most beautiful women on the face of the planet were at this UFC Freedom 250. And I know because the most beautiful one was there with me right on my arm. But as well as the First Lady, as well as so many others. You looked at this crowd, the people were all good looking. The people were all successful. The people were all happy to be there. They were also respectful. They were cheering. They just wanted to be there, right? They were having a great time. There was no fighting. There was no snapping. People weren't, getting each other's face or, oh, you're blocking my view, any of that. None of that stuff. Not even one hint of it. Why? Because these are people who wanted to be there for a good show, for a great show, as it turned out to be, a great event, and wanted to celebrate their country, wanted to celebrate the professionalism, the sportsmanship of the warriors who got into the ring. That's why all these people afterwards, oh, somebody made a joke or somebody made a comment or shut up. You all sound like a bunch of losers. You sound like a bunch of has-beens. You got all these internet losers going after Roman Reigns just for showing up, Triple H for showing up. You're a bunch of losers. Go back to your mother's basements. Right back, Human Events Daily.
This the Jack Posobiec Appreciation Hour. I can say confidently, I think Josh Shapiro would be the vice presidential nominee if it wasn't for Jack Posobiec. And that is, I'll be honest.
All right, folks, Jack Posobiec back live, Human Events Daily, Real America's Voice. And by the way, guys, throw that shot back up of the White House. That's a live shot of the White House, right, guys? That we're looking at? Production staff, correct production staff. Because, okay, so so the claw is still there, and we do know that it's going to be removed pretty quickly. I mean, they put that thing up so fast. They put it up in just a couple of days, so I know it's going to come down fast as well. That's the private sector for you, right? That's one of those great things that that Charlie used to talk about all the time, private sector versus public sector, that the public sector here provided, of course, the venue, but it was the private sector that put on the production, and you see what they're able to do. You just see it. I believe we have Evita Duffy back on. And Evita, just as we were going to break, I was pointing out that all of the people who are like mad and sniping at the UFC and Freedom 250 are a bunch of losers who live in their mother's basement. And it actually occurred to me that the lead terrorist in this domestic terror plot literally lived in his mother's basement, and it was his mother who turned him in. So I'm like, oh, wait, no, it's not just a joke. He actually lived in his mother's basement. Turns out that we were and are right about everything down to the last minute detail.
Jack, it's poetic. It's perfect. I want to tell you a story that my mom told me. So she was at this UFC fight, and afterward she spoke to a dignitary from a foreign country. I'll tell you the country. It's the UK. This person was from the UK, and they said, "I loved this event. It was amazing. I was in awe of it. I can't believe that the president and Dana White put this on. It's just like incredible. But I was a little weirded out. I was uncomfortable with this idea of the military being involved and having a presence at this America 250 Freedom 250 event." And my mom said, well, that makes perfect sense, right? This is a symbol, a spectacle of American exceptionalism, but also like American power. Right? People are angry about the fight. They're saying it's gross. These are gladiators. It's like, yes, this is a powerful symbol of who we are as Americans, who we are on a global scale. And of course, the military is going to be a part of that. And of course, people who hate this country hated this display of American power and exceptionalism. And this isn't just foreigners or losers in their mom's basements. This is a decades-long fight by Marxists like Howard Zinn, who have created this narrative of American shame, that we should be ashamed of who we are, that our history is something that we shouldn't be proud of. And they view everything that America has done through the prism of cultural Marxism, through apology. And frankly, it's depressing and demoralizing. This was a display of American power, of American patriotism. And that is why the worst of the worst in our society hated the event.
No, you do see that. And there's photos coming out of Brian Roa and Michael Thomas, people who were Southern California men who were involved in this. And again, you start to see the profile that is coming out of these individuals. And again, it's always the same. It's these like life losers who don't have anything better to do and want to attack these displays of patriotism, these displays of strength, these displays of the pride in our country. And by the way, I would say to that UK dignitary that I've seen concerts and all sorts of things at Buckingham Palace, right? And they've got the Queen's, the palace guards are there as well. So, I mean, this is not something that is completely beyond the pale or something. Like, no, the British do things like this all the time at Buckingham Palace, right? Maybe not as cool as the ones that we do, but Brian May of Queen was playing like guitar solos on the roof of Buckingham Palace. So like, this isn't really that different. Like they're just, I think they're just trying to look for something to say because it was just that cool. And when it comes down to it, though, Evita, we've even had, and I'm just going to say it, we've had some conservatives that were sort of like sniping from the sideline saying, oh, Freedom 250, it's no good, et cetera, et cetera. Why are they doing that? Why would, these so-called or alleged on paper conservative personalities want to attack something like this?
Well, I think you always want something to complain about when you're in a position of oftentimes a commentator, right? You always have to be upset about something, angry about something, and there's a lot of things to be angry and upset about in 2026. Freedom 250 is not one of them. And it's demoralizing for the people who are on the inside, who actually are doing a great job in this administration, to have people who are allegedly on Team America, on Team Trump, constantly being negative about this administration, even when they're doing really good things. So I think it's part of the grift, it's part of the game, and this is how they make their money. But we should really be encouraging and celebratory of the wins when we have them.
Yeah, it's the same idea of, and I know you've talked about this as well, that you need to present a positive, aspirational view of the country, not just to young women, but to young men, and to allow that to be shown at the highest stage in the entire land, which of course is the South Lawn of the White House. That's literally what it's all about. It's the power of that symbology. And we remember what the Biden administration was putting on that platform. It was the Pride Parade and trans Olympics, like every single day out there. Now you've got President Trump showing, Justin Gagey just walking out with the American flag and saluting the Declaration of Independence. I mean, you couldn't get more night and day. But this is something that I think has been, there's been a program that's been run on young men in this country, and President Trump is doing everything he can to turn it around.
Well, so, I mean, the Biden admin was fake, gay, and lame. That was the entire administration, and President Trump is presenting something completely different, a different idea of who we can be, who we should aspire to be. And you're right, Jack, that young men are invigorated by what the administration is putting forward, and the flip side, they were demoralized by what the Biden admin was putting out. And spectacle matters, symbolism matters. This is why in 2020, when the left was trying to tear down America, they were tearing down symbols of American heritage, of who we are as a people. They were tearing down statues of Washington and of Lincoln and vandalizing Plymouth Rock because they know that that means something to us. They know that that's an attack on who we are culturally and spiritually. And what the Trump admin is doing on the flip side is the exact opposite, is actually celebrating America and having us aspire to something greater.
Well, and by the way, I don't know if you realize this. I didn't realize this quite as much until I actually saw it. So one of the days I was head of the White House, and the one gate I was using, you walk by the Eisenhower Executive Office building, and that's where President Trump put up that statue of Christopher Columbus. And what I didn't realize was, or maybe this wasn't, really presented well when it happened, that's not just any statue of Christopher Columbus. That's the statue of Columbus from Baltimore Harbor that was tossed in during the George Floyd riots. They've resurrected it. They pulled it back up, cleaned it up, and now it's on full display at the White House itself. I couldn't believe that was the same one. I said, this is exactly what it's all about. Taking the excesses of the left, flipping them on their head, and literally like digging Christopher Columbus back up and putting him back on his pedestal. I couldn't think of a better, way to show this. We've got only about a minute left, but Evita, I have to say, your absence was noted from the program for, a couple of weeks. What were you doing? Were you like taking vacation? Were you hanging out? What was it?
Oh, I had a baby. I had my first baby, Rosita Alfonso. She is so beautiful. I'm obsessed with her, and I'm obsessed with motherhood. I literally have never done anything more amazing in my life. I've never loved anyone more than I love this little girl. High key recommend motherhood to everyone listening. Go have babies, have lots of babies, have conservative babies, and we're going to save America.
Well, we just wanted to say congratulations to you and to Michael and to the whole family. It's amazing. Motherhood looks great on you, and I hope for many, many more.
Thanks, Jack.
All right, God bless. Evita Duffy, go give her a follow. Go give her husband a follow as well, where he's running for Congress up in Wisconsin. Ladies and gentlemen, as always, you have my permission to lay ashore.